speaking of OCS, what drove you to make that decision? Why OCS? Why go the officer route?
So I wanted to be an officer from the moment I joined. From the moment I joined the National Guard, the Army, I wanted to be on the officer side because when I joined, I had over like 96 credit hours in college. So I'm almost there. I think right now I've only got like 7 classes left. So I asked intensely all my recruiters, what's the path that I should do? Like I want to do this. This is my end goal. How can I get there? And they all of them said, OCS would be probably the best bet. You go to your unit, like go through basic, go through AIT, go to your unit, get a couple of years of training and stuff like that and experience in the Army, and then go to OCS. And I was like, okay, I can do that. And that's what I did. And I've just kind of kept this path, like, the end goal is OCS. That's what I want.
Very cool. So it was a deliberate choice to go the enlisted, get some experience, and then do OCS instead of just going directly to OCS like Chad and myself did.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, okay. I had no idea about 09 Sierra or anything like that.
Your recruiter failed you.
Yeah, I was failed. No, I imagine that they didn't even suggest that to me because I hadn't completed my college degree yet. So
that makes sense.
And at the time, they weren't really struggling for officers or anything like that. So
it's different now too. Like whenever we were going to phase 1 of OCS, like it's a smart thing that he actually did go and get accredited, because when we were going, what was the kid's name? Was it Johnson, Chad? Is that who it was that like? So we had a group that was going to phase 1 with us for officer candidate school, and the kid had enough credit hours according to doctrine at that point. And then when we went to phase 1, we were reading the SOP that, like, literally they give you the SOP for phase 1 like the day you go, which is ridiculous. Like, I could have been reading this thing for a week and had it memorized. Instead, you have to memorize it in the 2 hours you drive up to Salina, Kansas.
Yeah.
But the kid was reading through and saw, he goes, oh my gosh, I don't have enough credit hours to go to this phase 1 in Kansas. Like, literally, that day, if he hadn't have read that thing, he could have been on the car with us and not known that he was not eligible to be there. So, I mean, he lucked out just reading that little stipulation in the SOP.
Yeah.
Like, got lucky that he didn't hop on that car with us and be like, well, I guess I'm going back.
Yeah.
Or I'm hanging out with you guys for 2 weeks. But, so how has and Ivey has not been with our class specifically the entire time. You were class 6-8 before, correct?
Well, I was with their pre OCS, so I went to accelerated with that year of class 6-8.
Okay.
And when I went to accelerated, I injured my right leg. Like, it was like 3 days before phase 1 ended.
Oh my gosh.
And like I remember, like we had our full packs on. We were going to the classroom, and we were all stepping off this big. I mean, it was like 4 foot, or not 4 foot, but like, I mean, it was a big stone step down. And I stepped down, and I stepped hard on my right leg, and I mean, it just, like, as soon as I did it, I was like, oh my gosh, that hurts so bad. I cried out. I was like, ah! And went in there, and I had the medics check me out, and they were like, oh, you got some meniscus tearing in there. And I was like, oh, crap. So I was like, okay. So I went on profile. They were like, okay, so you can't, if you're on profile by the end of phase 1, like, you won't pass phase 1. So I was like, okay, so just give me a profile for a couple of days just to make it through, and I'll get off profile before phase 1 ends, and I'll get into phase 2. And they're like, okay. So I was doing that. I was kind of taking it easy. I was like, I just need like 1 day of rest. Mm-hmm. And because, I mean, phase 1 is intense. Like, it's probably the most intense, like, because you got your chow hall runs, and like, you're running with full packs. And my little platoon that we had, our PTs, platoon trainers, they were like sadistic, is what I like. We all had our rifles, and then they were like, oh, that's not good enough. Like, then they started giving us like these RPGs that we had to carry, and I ended up carrying the RPG and doing road guard, and like, it was just like I was sprinting with this extra 40 pounds that I had with all my ruck and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was just,
you went to
I went to South Dakota.
So, and South Dakota is the worst too. That's what at least our training cadre say, like they say South Dakota's no joke. Like they are meaner than snot up there, and they actually quit sending OCS candidates up there for a while because the attrition rate was just so bad.
Yeah.
So there's multiple phases of OCS, and you have accelerated and you have traditional. So I mean, obviously you have ROTC and federal OCS, but so for us in the Guard, we have accelerated and traditional. Chad and I and Ivy are currently in the traditional program. So Ivy originally went to accelerated in South Dakota.
Yeah.
And typically they say go to the Alabama one because the Alabama one's easier, but it's in the winter time though too. But so the accelerated summer is in South Dakota in the summertime, and like I said again, our cadre for a while quit sending people there because it was so bad. The attrition rate was so bad. The stuff that they did up there was so difficult.
Yeah.
And I'll say this too, phase one for us was not a cakewalk. I mean, I wouldn't say, looking back on it, I would say it really wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
But like while we were doing it, like some of the stuff sucked pretty good. Like the worst part of it to me was like what you said was sprinting to chow. Like, I mean, they would say, put on your assault packs, and I had a crap ton of stuff in my assault pack, a crap ton.
Yeah.
And I had, because I didn't want to be without any item that I would think I would need, so I just so my thing had to weigh like 20, 30 pounds.
Oh, yeah, easily.
And, you're wearing your helmet, you got your flick on, you got your stinking camelback on.
Yeah, three things of water.
Yeah.
You got like 12 pounds of water on you or something like that.
And then if you're doing road guard is the worst.
Oh, terrible.
And I was in first platoon too. Like if you're in second platoon and third platoon, at least like the slow pokes will slow down the entire run. But if you're in first platoon, like you're going, like they're like keep up with the cadre or you're in trouble. And so we're just sprinting. And I remember being road guard, and that was the worst because you have to sprint ahead of the people sprinting and put your hand out and say halt, and then you have to catch. And there's like 4 intersections too that you got to do this at. Oh my gosh, and it's really not that long of a run, but when you run it fast in full gear, it is tough.
Yeah. I remember the very first day, like we were getting ready to go to our chow run and getting ready. They're like, all right, double time. And I was like, I can do double time in full gear. And then it was like we're running and then running faster. And I was just like, oh my gosh. Like I was not expecting that.
Flat out sprinting in the summer. I mean, I don't know how hot it was in there, but in Salina, it was hot.
South Dakota wasn't too bad. There was a couple of days that it was pretty intense. Like we had to go Heat Cat 5, where
we were in Heat Cat 5 almost every day in Salina, except for like we lucked out on day 1 whenever they, the cannon goes off and they start the show. Like they start the tack attack. Oh my gosh, it was cool that day. It was like 80 something. So and it was cloudy, overcast. We thought it might rain, but yeah, it was cool that day. And then every other day the sun came out and it got. Heat Cat 5 every day. We was like yes. Wearing the PC cap and everything else is fine. You're just like, oh, thank God.
I'll never forget this. Whenever phase 1 started, like whenever we got there, it was sunny, not a cloud in the sky. And then as it started getting closer and closer to the actual time for phase 1 to start, it started getting cloudier and cloudier. And then like I remember the colonel giving us the speech, and we're all in formation. We got all of our stuff. And it just started like, as his speech was closing, it started raining on us, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, what is this?" And then we did an about face and got just destroyed in the rain. Like I was just like, "Oh my gosh!"
Flow's getting heavier. It's getting heavier. Slower, slower. Like, that's the tack attack or OCS. Phase 1 is what I thought basic training would be.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I thought basic training would be like every minute of it. And OCS was closer to what I envisioned basic training would be like.
Yes. So, like, say I went into basic with the idea that it was like, okay, so I've really got to push myself because I wasn't in the greatest shape when I went to basic, but I was under the impression that I could fail basic. And some people did. But you got to be like...
You got to be a scumbag to fail. Or you got to get injured bad doing something stupid.
Yeah. Because there was some people that I graduated basic training with that, like, they didn't pass a single ruck. They fell out of every ruck. Like, the last ruck, the forge, this person didn't even carry their ruck, like, halfway through. Like, they were just walking, and they couldn't keep up with us. And I mean, it was just Like at that point, I was like, okay, you're never gonna fail basic training. Like they'll just keep you. There was one person that was with us that they got recycled like 6 times before they finally graduated with us. But it was like you're there. You're never gonna leave unless you quit or you
blow it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I remember from basic training was just like, if you think basic training was hard, you're in for a tough life in the end.
Yes.
You're in for
Yeah.
a tough military career.
Yeah. But no, I've enjoyed OCS. I've enjoyed my time in the Army quite a bit. Like it's fun to get tired and work out, you know, keeps you in shape, keeps you healthy. One story. So I remember for OCS, the land nav is a big critical event. Like your 2 critical events in phase 1, you got to pass your 6-mile ruck and you got to pass your land nav. And before OCS, I was like, okay, so I want to get a red light. We're authorized red light. So I want to get something that's better than like my L light. And I went through on Amazon. I found this like red light. It was probably like just a couple inches big, whatever. But I was like, okay. Well, I started looking at the reviews on it, and this was like, oh, this is great for OCS. And I was like, that's it for me. So I bought it, and I put it on there, and I was like, yeah, I got it. And then when we passed our 6-mile ruck, and we started doing our land nav, like we started doing the night land nav, and this was like the day before we tested. I remember I was going through this brush trying to find my point, and I bent down, and my red light came out, and whenever you use that red light, it was like a spotlight
beam.
Like just I mean, you could see in the dark. It was like a regular light, but it fell out of my thing, out of my pocket, and I got to my point, and I was like, oh crap, where's my red light? It's like, no. And then I just when I took the test, I was like, oh my gosh, I had my crappy little L light. You can't see 10 meters in front of you, you know, it's just terrible.
Yeah. We in phase 1, Chad and I got these lamps, these red lamps that a friend of his who went to federal OCS recommended. He goes, get these are good. And I got called the Blue Falcon because of how bright the beam was. Like, Chad was like, wow, you carry a light that bright, you're a Blue Falcon. Like, I was just like, federal OCS approved. What
Yeah.
do you do about it? It's like like this, I'm meeting the standard.
Yeah.
So yeah, Chad was not happy with the brightness of my light.
You got like a red lantern out there.
Yeah, I did, but the land nav was tough. So
It was, yeah.
and I say tough. It wasn't tough. It was just it's different doing it at night.
Very
different.
Very mathematically precise. Like, I mean, if you have like 1,000-meter point from point A to point B, like any deviation in your
trajectory.
in your azimuth is
It's
going to send you 100 meters on either direction probably.
And that's actually how I met Ivey. Well, not really met him. Like I'd been in pre-OCS I only went to pre-OCS for like 3 drills before phase 1 reared its ugly head.
Yeah.
So I felt super unprepared when I went to phase 1. Like I did land nav once, and the one time I did land nav, I was out at night doing the night land nav, and I dropped my dropped my land nav coordinates, and I was going to turn in my points, and I was like, I did it. I found all my points, and I know they're right.
Yeah.
And then Sergeant Hocher was like, hand it to me, and I was like, I dropped it. I was like, it's over. I started running back into the darkness looking for these land, and then here comes Ivey. Hey, I found some land nav points out there. I was like, God, he saved me. So yeah, that was my first real memory of Ivey out there. I was like, Ivey saved me. He goes, yeah, we'll be in I didn't even know that you had already gone to phase 1 at that point.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, I'll be in traditional, and then he never showed up with us at phase 1. And I got back, and they're like, yeah, Ivey already went to phase 1. I was like, he did? So now he's in our class with us, and they're like, yeah, Ivey's in your class with you. I was like, that's cool.
Yeah. That was pretty fun, man. That Gruber land nav course is
It's not hard.
Not hard
it's
at all.
It's a pretty easy one.
And you can handrail it real easy. Those.
Well, except for the fact you have to claw over barbed wire to like get to some
Yeah.
point. Like I was out there and I was walking one of the senior officer candidates who was basically a commissioned officer just waiting to do the ceremony was out there with us, and I was like, I'm handrailing this road, but I can't find the point, and I should have found it by now. He goes, yeah, you're not this road right here you're walking on isn't on the map. And I was like, what do you mean it's not on the map? And he was like, yeah, it's that road over there. And I was like, over the barbed wire fence. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy. Like, so you want me to climb over this barbed wire fence to find a point? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, what? Like, usually a barbed wire fence indicates like, is there like a minefield over there? It's not a military installation, for God's sake. So it's always scary because they're specific at phase 1. They're like, do not cross over any barbed wire fences or you will be in a danger area. And I was like, okay. I was like, it's not like that at Fort Gruber.
Yeah.
Crawl over whatever you want to get to your point. I was like, God.
South Dakota had a couple of fences that you had to crawl over. I will say this, like with OCS, if you can, for phase 1 specifically, if you can make it to land nav, you've passed phase 1, in my opinion.
Yeah,
like if you can
find your land nav points,
yeah,
you're done.
Yeah, because like the land nav, that whole week, because phase 1's about 2 weeks, and that whole week of land nav is way easier than that first week.
Oh, yeah, the only thing I'll say is
mess with
your feet will hurt by the end of the day because you're on your feet all day and you're walking through wet mush. Depending on if it was soggy out there every day, so like my feet were soaked at the end of it. So your feet are wet, they're sore, they're aching. Like I remember on one of the practice and day to night land nav, I literally just sat down on the side. I was like, my feet hurt so bad. I just sat on the road for like 15 minutes, and people walk past me. Are you all right? Yeah, I'm just taking a break, sitting down, relaxing for a little bit. And I was like, I'll see you at the finish line because I just got to sit down for a little bit, and rest my head because you're just tired. You're dog tired the whole time because you're not sleeping. You're on fire. You're doing fire guard stuff. So. And again, I don't think phase 1 was retrospectively. It wasn't that hard. When we were doing it, I was like, "This is hell.
Yeah.
This is the worst."
Yeah.
But when you look back, it's really not that difficult. It's just play the game, keep your head up, and stay motivated. And like I said, just walk from point A to point B, and you'll survive.
Yeah, and that's really what it is. It's a game. The PTs, they definitely try and break you.
Yeah.
Well, no matter how they can get to, especially at South Dakota, like they were trying to break everybody.
Yeah, and that's what they do. They want to weed out people who will not make good officer candidates because they don't want people who are indecisive or who are going to break down to be leading troops out on the battlefield. So whether that be for a combat MOS or a non-combat MOS, you got to make those decisions to potentially endanger people's lives.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to future officer candidates or future folks who are looking to go through OCS at this point in time?
I would definitely say, because that phase 1 tests you. Even like, because like looking back on it, it wasn't that hard, but when you're going through it, it's tough. Like you really puts some mental strain on you. You don't have any sleep during the time, and you're just going from one thing to another, and you're just, especially if you're going accelerated, you're just rushing through stuff as fast as you can, taking tests. I think phase 1 you take like 2 or 3 academic tests, like leadership tests and this and that, but I would say just keep your head up. Like you really want to prepare yourself mentally. Like you're going to go through hell, but if you can make it through, if you can make it 2 weeks in past the land nav, I mean you've got it. You've got the schedule down. You've got everything else down. Like all you got to do now is just continue to pass your tests, focus on one exam at a time, and really mark your test as your time. Like okay, so I've got my 4 mile coming up. I've got my 9 mile coming up. And you pass that, and then it's like okay, so I'm getting to the nitty gritty. Then the last 2 weeks is going to be your phase 3, which is that's something that we're going to all go through.
Sticks lanes.
Yeah. And that is really the fun part.
It is.
Because you're doing
combat related stuff.
Yeah, what you're trained to do, running missions. So I'm receiving the order, and I am creating this mission, and I'm going to come up with this plan to complete said mission. So
yeah, I would say I would piggyback off of his advice, and I would just say keep your head up, know what's in front of you, and if you're in a leadership role, don't expect to get much sleep that night, at least in
No.
phase one. I remember in the rules, like, because you'll sit there, like, I got unceremoniously appointed XO as the second group of kids. Like, I wasn't, thank goodness I wasn't the first two that had to do it, but I was the second group of kids. And as we got up there, I'm just reading through the SOP, like, what are my jobs? What are my responsibilities?
Yeah.
It's like, I have to make a PL binder, or I have to make, not a PL binder, I have to make a XO binder, and I have to keep a roster of all the current candidates, all of their weapons and serial numbers. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. Like, I have to do a lot of stuff. You have to communicate with 3 platoons worth of students.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have to get all this information from them. So I go up to their PLs and I say, I need a list of all your guys, their name, their full name, and serial numbers of their weapons.
Yeah.
And then you say the same thing to every single PL of each platoon. And you say, get me this information. And then you put it in a binder. And most people didn't bring a binder. I brought an extra binder because somebody said you should probably bring a binder with you. So I just happened to. So I was up all night organizing these sheets and stuff when I was the XO, on top of writing a essay for not carrying my weapon with me. When the actual CO of the entire thing, he goes, Watson, come here right now. And
Yeah.
it was after the 6 mile where I'm sitting down on my ruck eating my meal, and he was like, come here right now. And I was like, crap, so I just get up and go, and then where's your rifle? And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
He's like, 500-word essay tonight. So I'm writing a 500-word essay, trying to organize this binder, and then I'm making a list for the next XO it's a XO guide for dummies is what I call it. And I stayed up all night writing this thing. So the guy who came after me, and like, you can ask Chad, like, it was somebody in his platoon, and there's like, your brother, like, this thing is amazing. This binder, like, he gave me a dummy's guide to survive this. And that's what you do. You want to set the guy behind you up for success. And that's what I did. I gave him the binder. I said, everything you need to know about your job is in this binder. I mean, you can read it in the SOP too, but it's also in this binder.
Yeah.
And everybody who went after me was like, dude, this binder's amazing.
Yeah.
And so that's what you do. You don't expect to get a lot of sleep. Set people up for success, and you're going to be, if you fail at something, you can expect to be writing a 500-word essay that night about it. Because I remember sitting there staying up late at night, and there'd be people getting up at the middle of the night. I'm like 2 a.m. still working on this thing. And like somebody would wake up, Watson, you need to go to bed. And I was like, I know, but I got to finish this thing. So, and then when I handed it to the cadre member, they were like incredibly impressed with, like, they didn't pass me, of course.
No, yeah.
But the guy was like, he's like, where'd you get this binder? And I was like, I made it. And he goes, how did you make this? And I was like, I brought the binder with me. And he was like, you did? And I was like, yeah. Like, I was told it'd be a good idea to bring, like, a binder or something. And it was like, but him thinking, like, what are the odds of this kid who had the binder becoming the XO for the position that needed the binder specifically? You know?
Yeah.
Like, it's like a shot in the dark, once in a lifetime thing. So it was good. So just survive, keep your head up, and just listen to the cadre.
Yeah.
It's not there to make you fail. It's there to set you up for success. They don't want you to fail the course. They want everyone who goes to pass.
Yeah.
But they will weed out the They'll separate the wheat from the shade.
I will say that, like, if you're in a leadership position, just expect to not get a go. Like, especially in phase one, they're not going to give anybody goes. They're just going to tell you that you're terrible. You're a terrible person. You suck at life. Like, just expect that.
Just give up.
Yeah. Yeah. But
would you have any more advice you would give, or any just life or dad advice you would give out to anybody who's in the Army or in general?
Yeah, just keep your head up, man. Like, it's the suck only lasts so long, and it's the suck that really brings. That's where you make your friends. That's where you make the fun memories. Is when everybody's out there sucking together, and it's really the being in the Army is probably the most fun I've had. It's definitely the worst fun I've ever had. Also, but
What an apt description.
Yeah.